student, welcome to the lecture on compensation and incentives, and after this lecture we will be able to learn the following objectives: understand the compensation program, discuss about employee benefits, describe stages of organizational development, understand the concept international compensation, explain the acquired. Let's start with a brief introduction to the topic compensation and incentives. NICE, Incentive Compensation Management, enables organizations to optimize their incentive programs by automating processes and providing an end-to-end ability to create, manage and distribute all aspects of commission program. NICE Incentive Compensation Management increases accountability while establishing a culture of continuous improvement. The solution provides organization greater calculation accuracy, reduce costs for managing incentives, improve sales force and service employee motivation and retention, a pay-for-performance system which rewards employees for achieving targets that aligns with business strategy. Designing compensation program. A compensation program that will actually improve and sustain key employee performances must conform to behavioral principles. Wages and salaries generally operate as negative reinforcers rather than positive. Here are recommendations for designing or improving pay-for-performance programs through the application of behavioral principle. Replace subjective performance measures with objective performance measures. Paying someone for being cooperative fails to specify or direct the employee to reduce true business result. Replace bonuses with pay for performance. Bonuses are after the fact discretionary payments to employees for a job well done. For bonuses to motivate employee performance, the employee would have to be clairvoyant. Replace annual performance measurement with more frequent measurement. Performance measurement should be based on objective data and feedback should be provided to employees at least monthly. Replace large group measures with small team and personal performance measures. Paying employees on large group results is behaviorally unsound for two reasons. First, the employee typically has little or no control over the outcome. Second, the payment is based on the performances of hundreds or thousands of employees. Replace discretionary pay for performance plans with rule-driven plans. A successful pay for performance program must be as reliable and predictable as a traditional wage and salary program. Employees will not invest time and effort in a program in which the measures criteria and pay potential change frequently and unpredictably. Keep it simple. When designing compensation plans, one must never forget that ordinary people are the ones who must be motivated by it. The more complex a plan becomes, the fewer people it will motivate. Don't change it often. Be very reluctant to change the plan, as even good change can be traumatic. Avoid recruiting heavy hitters. Don't design our compensation plan to focus on attracting these heavy hitters. Compensation. Compensation. Something such as honey given or received as payment or reparation as for a service or loss. In financial terms, the salary and wages one pay to our employees for the work they do. Other non-financial forms of compensation can also be offered to attract and retain staff. Some of the key sources for determining suitable salary ranges for our employees are classified ad listings for specific position both in our daily newspaper and on the internet, professional and trade organization for the specific fields in which one is hiring. Most organizations regularly publish salary data. Human resources consultants specialize recruitments in the appropriate fields.
Why do industry leaders use incentive for employee performance management and compensation management? To make sure that each employee has objectives supporting personal development while staying aligned with team and company direction. To ensure that employees constantly have a clear understanding of these objectives and how they are doing against them, so they can adjust immediately if necessary. To define the most effective compensation plan to best support these objectives given budgetary and local job market or legal constraints. And so that employees have total visibility into these compensation plans, thus maximizing motivation and retention. Thanks to Exentive, industry leaders have managed to link these four aspects together to have compensation plans that are aligned and effective. So what is it that Exentive provides for industry leaders? First, pre-built mechanisms to easily leverage data from HR and other systems, including external benchmarks, and to collect and approve qualitative information so they always have fresh, high-quality, controlled data. Automation of their business rules for calculation and real-time simulation of salary, bonus, commission, and stock options so they always have the most effective total compensation in place for each employee. Clear communication of objectives, results, and all aspects of compensation in one global view so that employees understand their objectives, results, and compensation. A process flow to ensure performance and compensation management is in the hands of local managers, under the control of human resources, so that these processes are executed much faster, while empowering local managers. Whether they use Exentive for managing employee performance, compensation, or both, they benefit from a more efficient process that delivers higher employee motivation and retention. Working with Exentive, industry leaders are staying ahead of their competitors.
Employee benefits. Employee compensation packages commonly include both wages and benefits. The compensation benefits are provisions of selected benefits provided by employees to their employees. Employee benefits and benefits in kind, also called fringe benefits, prerequisites of perks, are various non-wage compensation provided to employees in addition to the normal wages or salaries. The purpose of employee benefit is to increase the economic security of staff members and in doing so improve working retention across the organization. The term perks, also perks, is often used colloquially to refer to those benefits of a more discretionary nature. Often perks are given to employees who are doing notably well and are having seniority.
We've actually asked our survey participants if about compensation levels, and have they in this coming year, are they planning to compensate or give about the same level of increases, higher increases, or lower increases? And thankfully, only about 9% of our 800 participants said that they plan to give lower increases. So I think that the base salary increases that we're seeing in the marketplace, the median is around 3%, 2.93%. In the middle market segment, it's around 2.67% if you really take into account looking more at the means for that group. But what is interesting is that we lived in a long period where those numbers were around 4%. Now we've sort of readjusted to a 3%, even lower in some of the smaller marketplaces. And I don't think that's going to be made up. It's being looked at as a lot of water under the bridge. And when we ask, we're happy to see that a lot of the pay freezes have dropped off, are not happening anymore. But there's not a lot of organizations that are saying, I'm going to make you whole and completely do all of that back pay or something like that. They're living in a new normal. Verisight recently released its 2011-2012 Compensation, Retirements, and Benefits Survey, and this is one of the only surveys that really gets at all three: compensation, retirement, and benefits in one single source. The trends show that over half of executives are really finding challenges in retaining their key employees, and more than 60% are actually finding that they're having trouble getting that talent in the door. So 50% of executives are finding that retaining talent is one of the things that's on their mind, and over 40% are having difficulties even getting that talent in the door. 99% of the organizations that have a defined contribution plan in place, they are finding that probably a majority of those, close to 60%, are not prepared to deal with the upcoming regulations for fee disclosures and so on that are coming down the pike in the retirement plan world. 65% of middle market executives indicate that it's really benefits costs that are driving their total compensation and total rewards package decisions, more so than the economy or their financial performance. It's really those benefits costs that are keeping them up at night.
Stages of organizational development. Multinationals gradually progress through 5 stages of organizational development, including the export, direct, overseas manufacturing, international division, and global corporation stages. Each stage affects the organization's personal development strategy. In the export stage, there is little or no need for overseas personnel. In the direct sales stage, the company begins to employ its own overseas sales and distribution staffs. In the overseas manufacturing stage, there is need for skilled and semi-skilled labor, which is drawn largely from the local labor force. In the international division stage, all 3 groups of personnel, PCNs, HCNs and TCNs, are now needed to manage the international production, finance and marketing functions. Finally, in the global corporation stage, the company takes on a global orientation. It requires an even more international cadre of executives of this stage. Objectives of international compensation. As organizations have become more skillful in efficiently running global overseas operations, a new trend has emerged wherein the availability of well-trained, knowledgeable and host country nationals who manage businesses within their boundaries has augmented. MNCs design and practice compensation and benefits to recruit and retain more suitable employees in terms of efficiency and cultural adaptability. Here are some significant characteristics which an international compensation policy must possess. The policy should be consistent and fair in its treatment equity element. The policy must work to attract and retain personnel in the areas of greatest need and opportunities. The policy should facilitate the transfer of international employees in the most cost-effective manner for the MNE. The policy should serve to motivate employees. Overall strategy, structure and business needs of the multinational. Attracting and retaining staff in areas where multinational has greatest needs and opportunities. Competitive factors such as incentives for foreign service, tax equalization, reimbursement of reasonable cost, equity, ease in administration, due consideration of international employees, financial protection and financial incentive. Reconciliation of organizational advancement and employee objectives should be consistent with the overall strategy, structure and business needs of the multinational, must work to attract and retain staff in the areas where the multinational has the greatest needs and opportunities, hence must be competitive and recognize factors such as incentive for foreign service, tax equalization and reimbursement for reasonable cost. Should facilitate the transfer of international employees in the most cost-effective manner for the firm, must give due consideration to equity and ease of administration. To design and implement compensation programs and executive compensation. Approaches to international compensation. Now, the most commonly used design is a so-called balance sheet approach. According to this method, the multinational seeks to ensure that its expatriates at a minimum will not be worse off for accepting on overseas assignment. Basically, the balance sheet approach begins with the employee's existing parent company compensation, salary, benefits and any other forms of monetary or non-monetary remuneration. To this are added 2 other components, incentives to accept the foreign appointment and an equalization payment to ensure the expatriate does not suffer from foreign country differences in salary or benefits. International compensation problems. Problems often arise when one or more of the following principles are not allowed. The compensation program does not provide for equitable treatment of expatriates, host and third country nationals. The program is not sufficiently competitive to attract, motivate and retain qualified personnel. No unusual gains or losses are associated with assignments overseas, and the costs of the program are not reasonable. Going abroad may mean that executives will be out of the career mainstream for some time. So it can be concluded that an employer has to determine what compensation package has to be offered to offset the risks to the preservation of the executive's career. Therefore, it is not easy to find out what the contents of a benefits package should include for a job in a foreign country. Difficulties with the base salary. One of the complications in the balance sheet approach lies in exactly defining the base salary upon which to add allowances and other benefits. For extended overseas assignments of long duration, 3 to 5 years, the best approach is to use the international standard approach. However, the base salary should follow the company base salary of the parent company if it is located in a high-wage developed country. On the other hand, if the assignment is of short duration, less than 3 years, then a home country base makes more sense.
Of those reasons has to do with pay for performance. The notion is that by having a process like this and documenting things, that they insert a piece of paper in the middle of the process, thus allowing them to give smaller pieces of pie to some people and larger pieces of pie to others, and in so doing, protecting themselves. Now, what I'd like to do is make sure that you understand a very fundamental principle. It applies to small companies as well as large. At your company, you don't pay for performance with base salaries. At your company, you can't pay for performance with base salaries, and most importantly, at your company, you don't even want to. Now, I'd like to prove that by just going over with you very quickly what really determines somebody's salary increase. In reality, what determines somebody's salary increase before anything else has to do with the budget. The budget's a little thing like, do you have any money? For example, I'm shooting this video in Atlanta, Georgia, where Delta Airlines is headquartered. In 2006, in January, guess what? People not only didn't get a salary increase, they were asked to donate money back to the company, minus 14% across the board. What happened to pay for performance at Delta Airlines? Well, the answer, of course, is they were bankrupt. They had no money. If you have no money, why would we talk to you about pay for performance? There's nothing here to give out. And it's that way with all of us. We've got to have money to spend on fixed costs, which is our people. In other words, we've got to have that to even start the conversation about pay for performance or any kind of administration of salaries. The second thing you've got to know before performance is you've got to know something about what are you paying this person today. If you've got a very junior person, you probably have a lot of room. Most of us pay people on a salary range between this amount of money and this amount of money. If they happen to be near the top of the range, we've either got to promote them to a higher salary grade or we have to curtail what we would give them. It doesn't matter how well they've done. If you're already paying them at 119% of the market, most of us are going to say, we got to slow you down. Now, if you have money and you have room, now we finally care about performance. And we actually care about another thing called potential. What is potential? Potential says, are you silly enough to want more responsibility and good enough to earn it? In other words, do you have another salary grade that you can jump to once you get to the end of this one? If you have all of these things, we could administer your salary and you might get a decent increase, but in the best of terms, most of us are talking about somewhere between 3 and 5%, because most budgets are very small, and the way we allocate on some kind of distributed basis that presents equity and fairness across the board is small. So what I would tell you is tying performance to pay is a dead end, and attempting to justify this year's pay increase based on last year's performance is a complete cul-de-sac. You can't make it work.
Local competitiveness. The base salary must be competitive in local terms. If the base salary is wrong, everything else is wrong, because bonuses and benefit plans usually are related to base salary. Local competitiveness can be established periodically on the basis of a total comparison of all elements of compensation, including a representative sample of important local, United States and other foreign control companies operating in similar or related industries, any other locally dominant pattern setting groups. Comparison surveys should establish both the historical patterns and the recent trends to provide the background for proper total compensation decision. Relocation. Allowances usually cover moving, shipping and storage charges, temporary living expenses, subsidies regarding appliance or car purchases or sales, and down payments or lease related charges. Education allowances. Expatriates' children are an integral part of an international compensation policy. PCNs and TCNs usually receive the same treatment. Some problems affecting the benefit component. A crucial equity problem arises when expatriates, even in democratic countries, do not have a democratic view of eligibility for employee benefits. Commonly experienced problems include family problems. It is important to note that more than half of all early expatriates' returns can be attributed to family problems. The inability or unwillingness of the expatriate spouse and children to adapt to life in another country surfaces as one of the most important causes of failure. Lack of respect for acquired international experience. Most of the firms in the United States still are heavily oriented toward the domestic market. This fact is evident even in those companies that have a long international operation tradition. As a result, interactional experience has yet to be sufficiently valued. Some ingredients to success: companies that have low repatriation failure rates attribute their success to good communication with the individual and his or her family before, during, and after the international assignment. According to Schilling, successful companies offer the following observation: advanced career planning, mentors, opening global communication channels, example email, faxes, recognizing the contribution of repatriated employees. Termination of contract. If one is discharged, fired, or laid off from one's job, one needs to find out what rights has and how to enforce them. It is important to figure out whether the termination was lawful, whether the employer owes any continuing obligation, and how to exert such rights. To understand whether the discharge was legal, begin with what kind of employment relationship you and your employer had. To figure out the employment relationship, one should look at the following materials: any letters that one got inviting one to apply for the job, any letter one received that offered one the job, any new employee orientation materials or employee handbooks one received, any contracts or agreements one signed, any union contracts or laws and regulations that apply to one's employment, and a personal file which you can obtain from a human resources representative at our employer. Individual employment agreement. Here is what an employment agreement embraces. If one signed an employment agreement with our employer, that agreement may tell one when and under what circumstances one can be terminated. It may lay out the reason employees can be terminated, how much the employee's notice will get, and whether the employer has to start with other kinds of discipline before she or he can fire one. It may also tell one that there are grievance procedures that you and the employer must follow before and after termination, and give you certain rights if you are terminated. Implied employment contract. Although our employer may claim that one has an at-will relationship, provisions in employee handbooks, supervisor handbooks, orientation materials, policy manuals, or actual employment practices may have created an implied contract of employment, giving one termination rights not available to at-will employees. Oral commitments may have also created an implied employment contract. If one does have an implied contract, its exact terms will depend on how the employer has carried out its policies with other employees. Summary. Now, in the end, let us summarize what we have learned in this lecture. Increasingly today, globalization is a reality for organizations of almost any size. Only the smallest companies seem unaffected by the disappearance of global boundaries among organizations, markets, and people. Globalization has increased awareness of and concern for creating internationally equitable compensation system in many companies. The complex nature of international compensation dictates that it receives special attention from organizations operating in a multinational environment. It is crucial that organizations understand the kind of employees employed by international firms, the elements that comprise an international compensation system, and the special problems associated with returning citizens on overseas assignment to their home corporation. An expatriate, sometimes referred to as an expat, is a citizen of the country in which the organization headquarters is domiciled. For example, an American working for U.S. subsidiary or branch located in Thailand is an expatriate. An organization may elect to send a domestic employee or manager to an overseas assignment for any number of reasons. to broaden an employee's or manager's perspectives related to international operations, to start or staff new ventures, to train local employees to utilize specific expertise possessed by the employee, to protect the organization interests, to help develop the employee or manager, to exist in the transfer of technology or skills, or to market products. Evidence suggests that American firms use expatriates to a much less extent than do Japanese firms.